in thinking.
My name is Sean Bradeseth, and I've been thinking about an old song I used to sing when we were younger, we were kids. Do you remember the song, don't build your house on a sandy land, don't build it too near the shore? I won't sing the rest. The words are, it might be kind of nice, but you'll have to build it twice. You'll have to build your house once more. I grew up singing that song. And even today, we've got a children's Bible that we read for our children, and all my children love the story of the man who builds his house in the sand and the man on the rock, and how it all collapses, and it's got funny pictures, and they love it. It's their favorite story. And I grew up with that story. And I've been thinking about that story a lot. Here's a question that I'm not sure to my mind I've ever heard anyone ask. And this is the question. What is the storm? What's the storm that comes? Jesus is telling us to stand on his words for when the storm comes. And he can't be talking about the storm of life. Everyone goes through storms of life. You can't avoid them. There's nothing you can do in terms of difficulties of life. I think Jesus is talking about something else. I want to say, I think he's talking about God. I think he's talking about the storm of God's judgment on the earth, on our lives. I was watching a video clip the other day of a panel of pastors and church leaders, and there was a young, vibrant, well-known church leader. I'm not going to name him because it'll just give you a bad impression of him when I don't think he's necessarily a very bad guy. But he was on this panel, and there was actually a theologian with him, next to him, and then some other people. And the question came, what does Jesus save us from? And I wonder if when we heard that question, we think, oh, that's easy. And this young pastor, who's very, very influential, his answer was, Jesus saves us from ourselves. And I don't know if people in the room picked up that that's not the right answer. But he kind of qualified it, and he talked a bit. And then the guy next to him, who was he didn't have a better answer because he was a theologian, but he was actually just more scripturally based in what he was saying. He said, actually, Jesus saves us from God's wrath. Jesus saves us not from ourselves, but from God's wrath. And I don't know how awkward the young pastor felt. I don't know if he felt like he'd been sort of shown up, but he didn't seem to show it. He just kind of carried on. But the answer, God saves us from ourselves, is wrong. Jesus saves us from God's wrath, from God's anger. The house built on the rock is to hold us firm when God's judgment comes, because it's coming for all of us. And if we think that Jesus comes to help us just sort of get over the worst parts of ourselves, or weather the difficult things that we're going through, you see, the answer of Jesus saving us from ourselves just means that I've got to overcome myself. That's not true. I'm sold to sin. And as a person sold to sin, I'm an enemy of God. And Jesus comes to save me from God's anger. But God sent Jesus. God sent Jesus. The Father who loves us sent his Son so that we would be spared from his own anger. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that amazing? I thank the Lord for his plan for Jesus. I pray that he'd help us get it right, that we'd understand, actually, we are in the firing line of God's wrath, but God's made a way for us. That we wouldn't buy into secular humanism that kind of just sees us as just improving ourselves and getting over the worst parts of ourselves, but we'd see ourselves as escaping God's rightful judgment. I believe the storm is God. I believe the storm that would come to each of us in our lives. Some people might breeze through their lives without any difficulty. There's still a storm coming, and it's the scrutiny of God. When the scrutiny of God comes for those who love Jesus and are hidden with him in God, we are at peace with God. Isn't that wonderful? I thank God for that. I pray that he'd help us think about these things right and see them in the right way.
The end!